Single Dad's Incredible Journey, Millionaire's Open Safe reveals an unexpected, transformative secret. Jake Thompson wiped the grease off his hands, his fingers trembling ever so slightly as he stared at the pristine luxury sports car parked in his humble garage. This wasn't just another day in his small Texas town, it was a stark reminder of everything he wasn't. Glancing at the dust-laden floors, littered with tools and bits of scrap metal, he felt the weight of his worries. His gaze turned to the photographs pinned above his workbench, one of his daughter, Lily, laughing and carefree, another of him cradling her as a baby. A chill of inadequacy washed over him. Was he doing enough? Would he ever be enough? As he replaced a worn-out spark plug, Jake's mind drifted to their financial struggles, the bills that seemed to multiply yet never got paid in full, the panicked conversations swallowing him whole late at night. How could he guide Lily to a brighter future, a life with opportunities he could never dream of? The affluent families zipped past in their new cars, leaving him feeling like a ghost, trapped in the shadows of despair and longing. It felt like a cruel joke. He had poured his heart into his work, yet the gods of fortune had turned their backs on him. Suddenly, he discovered a hidden key inside the glove compartment while fixing the car. Curiosity, reckless but unavoidable, nudged him toward Mr. Thompson's office, a name that hung over him like a dark cloud, filled with disdain for the wealth and the type that flaunted it. He slipped through the door, heart fluttering, adrenaline coursing as he spotted the safe hidden beneath the desk. What lay behind that thick metal door? On one hand, the thrill of opportunity danced tantalizingly close. On the other, the moral weight of his decision threatened to crush him. As he crouched beside it, Jake felt a mix of hope and desperation. In this uncertain moment, it offered a potential path for Lily. The instinct to seize what had never been his battled fiercely against the fear of crossing an ethical line. Would he inherit the shadow of a fortune stained by misdeeds? He opened the safe, and the contents sent him reeling, cash piled and letters filled with the raw, unfiltered confessions of Mr. Thompson. Secrets about family strife and decisions made under pressure echoed in Jake's mind, striking too close to home. Could he even consider this wealth if it was wrapped up in someone else's pain? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. In the days that followed, a new restlessness settled into Jake's bones. He felt the weight of the decisions lurking, pulling him in one direction while his conscience yanked in the opposite. He found himself gazing at Lily, her enthusiasm toward schoolwork blooming, ignited by something he couldn't quite name. And yet, each time she laughed or shared her dreams of college, his heart sank. The future he craved for her felt in jeopardy, clouded by the choices fate had thrown his way. The dilemma consumed him: was wealth a blessing or a curse? He wanted to create a better life for Lily, but at what cost? Just as he felt the burden of his choices loom larger, echoing with desperation, a knock on the door shattered his thoughts. Mr. Thompson stood there, urgency flickering in his eyes. "We need to talk, Jake," he said, stepping in, casting shadows on Jake's already chaotic mind. Anxiety twisted in Jake's gut as he braced for the revelations that could change everything. What mysteries would surface? What truths would unfold, and at what price would they come? Jake's heart raced as he motioned for Mr. Thompson to sit. With each passing second, the room felt smaller, the air heavier with unspoken tension. This man, who had once seemed like a distant figure of aspiration, now loomed unnervingly close. He had innocently opened the door to a moral labyrinth, and now he stood on the precipice of choices that could alter his life and Lily's forever. "What's this about?" Jake's voice was steadier than he felt. He studied Mr. Thompson, searching for any hint of what lay behind his urgent expression. The millionaire readjusted his posture, clearly wrestling with his own thoughts. "I know what you found," he finally admitted, forcing the words out like soldiers marching into battle. Jake's stomach twisted into knots. Had Mr. Thompson arrived to reclaim his wealth? A part of him justified the urgency in his gaze. The safe had contained more than just money, it held the desperation of a failing legacy, the burden of guilt that no amount of cash could erase. "I wasn't going to take anything," Jake insisted, the words tumbling out more defensively than he intended. Damar. Thompson's eyes narrowed, softening slightly. "It's not about that. I came because there are things you need to understand. Things about my life, about what drove me to decisions that left me wealthy but hollow." Jake shifted uneasily in his chair, the room suddenly feeling like a confessional. Mr. Thompson began to share fragmented tales of ambition consumed by greed, of family ties severed in the pursuit of success. Each revelation was a sharp blade, cutting deeper into Jake's psyche, exposing fears he had cloaked beneath layers of denial. "What you found, it's not just a fortune," Mr. Thompson continued, his tone growing somber. "It's a reminder of everything I sacrificed to build my empire. My family, my daughter, she's lost because of my choices. I see the way you look at Lily, I see the love in your eyes. You don't want that kind of legacy, do you?" Jake's throat tightened. The gravity of Mr. Thompson's words loomed large. This wasn't merely about wealth, it was about the foundations, what he wanted to build for Lily and the remnants of what he might tear down in the process. "No, I would never want that for her. But how can I make sure she has what she needs?" "You have to define success for yourself," Mr. Thompson replied, leaning closer, urgency crackling in the silence. "It's not about fancy cars or big houses. It's the memories you create, the values you pass on. Trade this guilt for clarity. Your journey can be different, it can be better." Jake absorbed the weight of his words, the unsettling implications settling into his bones. The notions of wealth and success twisted in his mind like an unwelcome dance partner. What if he could employ this newfound insight not as a commodity but as a catalyst for change? The thought sparked both fear and determination within him. "Mr. Thompson," Jake ventured, his tone more resolute, "maybe there's a way to turn all this into something that helps both of us." The idea ignited a glimmer of ambition that had long been dulled by daily struggle. Yet, the questions surged like a wave: could he navigate this storm without sacrificing his soul? As Mr. Thompson regarded him, a flicker of admiration crossed his features. "You might just be onto something," he replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "But you'll need to confront your past, first." Jake was left to ponder the implications of those words. If he was to craft a new future for Lily, he had to embark on an odyssey of transformation, not just material but deeply personal. He was standing on the edge of uncharted waters, teetering between fear and an unquenchable thirst for change, and in that moment, he understood, the road ahead would demand more than just resolve, it would require him to confront the roots of his insecurities, mistakes, and desires. With a new plan bubbling beneath the surface and uncertainties swirling in his mind, Jake felt a shift within him, not just toward financial survival, but toward genuine professional and personal development. The stakes kept rising, but now there was no turning back. "Tomorrow," he resolved, "I will confront my past." Little did he know, the journey to his discovery might lead to far more than he ever anticipated. Jake trembled slightly as he stepped into the morning sunlight, the heat of the day contrasting with the storm within. Today was the day he would face his past. Over the last few hours, his mind had raced through memories, a montage of missed opportunities, wrong turns, and, most importantly, the lingering shadows of doubt. He hoped to transform the lessons from his encounter with Mr. Thompson into tangible changes in his life, both for himself and for Lily. He took a deep breath, focusing on the tasks ahead. The first step was clear: he was overdue for a conversation with his estranged brother, Thomas. Their relationship had been soured by years of resentment and unspoken words, but there was no escaping the fact that he needed support. If he aimed to break free from the cycle of cynicism that encased his family, he'd have to bridge that chasm. As he drove to Thomas's house, memories flooded back: the laughter, the arguments, the shared dreams, all of them overshadowed by a bitter fallout over petty disagreements that escalated beyond reason. What struck him most was the realization that he had allowed the past to dictate his actions, trapping him in a narrative that lacked any semblance of hope. Arriving at Thomas's small house, Jake hesitated at the door. He could almost hear the demons lurking behind it, accusations that had been lodged years ago, decisions made under the influence of anger. But today was different. Today, he wanted to shift the trajectory of his life, starting with this conversation. Jake. Thomas's voice shot through the door, tinged with surprise but all too familiar. He opened it, and the two brothers stood there, sharing a moment pregnant with unspoken emotions. The familiar scent of day-old coffee filled the air, and awkward silence settled upon them. "Can we talk?" Jake finally asked, surprising even himself with the steadiness in his voice. "Sure, but where do we start?" Thomas gestured toward the living room as he moved aside, allowing Jake to enter. Jake sank into a worn-out armchair, where memories echoed of conversations shared and lines drawn in the sand. "I don't want to keep living like this, with regrets in the way of who I could be or who we could be. I need to address everything that went wrong, starting with you." The layers of tension began to peel back as Jake bared his vulnerabilities, sharing the fears that plagued him and admitting his part in their fractured relationship. He felt lighter with each word, the weight of guilt lifting slowly off his shoulders. Thomas listened intently, a mix of curiosity and skepticism evident on his face. "You think just saying this will fix things?" "It's a start," Jake replied earnestly. "We're family, and I've been running from that connection out of fear. I need you in my corner. I want to create better memories with Lily and you." A long silence passed, thick with years of unarticulated grievances. Slowly, Thomas revealed his own regrets. Their revelation felt like pieces of a puzzle falling into place, limiting the ghosts of their shared history. In that discussion, Jake caught glimpses of the brother he once admired, and the man he desperately wanted to reconnect with. Through the weeks that followed, Jake embraced an unwavering determination toward growth. He recognized that it wasn't merely about financial security or professional accolades, it was embracing vulnerability and authentic relationships. He reached out to mentors, he studied strategies to redefine success, and he worked tirelessly to provide for Lily in a way that prioritized her values over material comforts. Although he encountered resistance, both from within and outside, Jake slowly began to craft a path that felt true to himself. Yet, doubts continued to nag at him. Was he really capable of achieving this new standard? Would others see his transformation as superficial? Months later, standing in front of a crowd at a local business seminar, he reflected silently on his journey. This was not a stage for boasting about riches, but an opportunity to showcase his hard-won growth and hope. But before he could begin, a familiar face emerged in the crowd: Mr. Thompson. The man who had unknowingly set this transformation in motion. The room went still as their eyes met, and Jake's heart raced in a mix of recognition and uncertainty. What would Mr. Thompson expect from him now? Had he observed the changes, the honest intentions? The questions surged forward like a tidal wave, leaving Jake to wonder if this moment would unravel all that he sought to build. The time had come to face not only his audience but the evolving man he had become and the consequences that awaited him. Jake stood at the podium, his pulse pounding in rhythm with his questions. Thoughts and apprehensions churned within him like an unfurling storm. The murmurs of the crowd faded into a low hum, and he wrestled with the weight of expectation. How could he convey the essence of his transformation without slipping into the very cynicism he sought to escape? Mr. Thompson's gaze remained fixed on him, unreadable yet unwavering. The man had been a catalyst for change, and now Jake faced the daunting possibility that this moment could either solidify or dismantle his progress. He cleared his throat, forcing himself to anchor his thoughts in the journey that had brought him here, one paved not just with lofty dreams but with relentless uncertainties. As he began to speak, the words were deliberate yet raw, exposed. "I once defined success by what I could accumulate," he admitted, his voice echoing through the room. "But these past months have taught me that true richness lies in relationships, the ones we cultivate with family, friends, and ourselves." He locked eyes with Thomas seated in the back, a silent pledge echoing between them. Jake spoke of his relationship with Lily, how fatherhood had reshaped his paradigm, urging him to prioritize authenticity over superficial success. He could see Mr. Thompson listening, the man's expression shifting from curiosity to genuine intrigue. I stumbled through the fog of regret and fear, he continued, tracing the arc from darkness to light. But stepping into vulnerability shattered the walls I had built for years. Each conversation with my brother, each moment embracing uncertainty, has forged a stronger, renewed sense of self. The audience was captivated, a stir of recognition passing through them as they connected with his struggles. He was no longer just a man standing alone, but a vessel of shared human experience, yet, amid the triumph of his revelation, doubts flickered at the periphery. Would they really believe him? Was he merely performing a role, masking an inadequate undercurrent of insecurity? The gnawing urge to retreat nearly overwhelmed him, but fighting through it became an act of defiance rather than despair. It was time to invite dinner with courage. This decade is just the beginning for me, and with that comes an inherent responsibility to challenge the narratives we've inherited and rewrite them for ourselves. But I know I can't do it alone, Jake confessed, his gaze sweeping across familiar faces. Let us embark on this journey together, let us inspire one another to pursue authenticity and growth. Applause rippled through the room, yet Jake felt the crackle of unresolved tension beneath the surface. The genuine camaraderie sparked hesitancy. Could collective support be relied upon when everything felt uncertain? It was a burden, not a resolution. He had opened the door, but the hardest part lay ahead. Out of the corner of his eye, Jake spotted Mr. Thompson raising a hand, an unprecedented request for the floor. Your journey resonates, Jake, he began, his voice steady. But tell me, what happens when we break those old molds and confront our deepest fears? How do we know when we've truly transformed? The question hung heavily in the air, probing into Jake's vulnerability, forcing him to engage with the core of his newfound identity. In that moment, he recognized another layer of complexity in his growth. This was not merely a story unfolding, but a canvas waiting for each stroke of experience. Tempted to evade reflection under the guise of positivity, Jake fought against the instinct. Transformation isn't a linear path. It's messy and often disheartening. The moment we think we've unraveled one layer, another appears, he confessed, emboldened by the enormity of the moment. We must be prepared to confront those layers head-on, continuously. The room fell silent, but the sirens of uncertainty stirred within him like a whisper assuring him that he was now aligned with truth. Jake was no longer simply delivering a narrative, he was living it. Jake's thoughts spiraled as he tried to articulate the ever-shifting boundaries within himself. He could feel the collective energy in the room, the wonder, the desire for change intermingled with trepidation. Had he thought through the implications of his confessions? Would he risk letting his vulnerabilities seep through the cracks? The stakes were higher than ever, and with Mr. Thompson's piercing gaze still on him, he sensed this moment stretching beyond personal transformation. It was about facing the raw uncertainty of potential reconnecting, both within and without. Jake inhaled deeply, staring into the unknown that lay ahead. What if the journey doesn't end? What if it continues to demand more of us than we ever imagined? The question echoed as he glanced back at Thomas, whose expression mirrored both pride and apprehension. There was no escaping contemplation, it was now part of his narrative. Jake's heartbeat echoed, driving him to the crux of his journey. Was he ready to confront the unknown, not just in the safety of personal achievements but within the potential of re-establishing every torn relationship? As applause rose around him, Jake felt the familiar currents of introspection pulling him deeper. Each step forward on this unpredictable path teetered between hope and fear, beckoning him to explore the next chapter of his life, one that demanded his truest self and posed a challenge he had yet to truly comprehend. What awaited him beyond this moment could very well redefine his purpose, but would it also be the key to unquestionable transformation? The applause slowly diminished, echoing in Jake's mind long after the sound faded. He stood there, heart racing, acutely aware of the weight of the question posed to him. Transformation loomed like a specter, an abstract concept that now felt all too real, and yet he sensed the collective anticipation from the audience, a glimpse of hope mingled with their own fears. What about the layers he had mentioned? What awaited him as he traversed this shaky ground? The realization hit him. Transformation was not merely a destination but the chaotic process of navigating desolation and discovery. He had opened the floodgates, but the waters were perilous and untested. They could sweep him away or reveal unforeseen treasures. As he stepped down from the podium, Jake felt a shift within himself, an overwhelming desire to dig deeper into the murky caverns of his psyche. He knew he had sparked a fire not just in himself but in those listening. They, too, were navigating their journeys, and the environment had transformed from one of performance to a laboratory of introspection. Jake found Thomas waiting at the stage's edge. With a furtive glance around, he leaned in. "That was raw, man. I could feel the honesty. But don't think that your problems are put to rest. You're just starting back up." Jake locked eyes with his brother, who always seemed to hold him accountable without uttering the words. "I know. I still feel the unresolved stuff clawing at me." "Like what?" Thomas prodded, genuinely curious. Jake hesitated, weighing his thoughts. "My relationship with Dad. It's in pieces. I left it because I thought I was safe there, only to realize it still looms over me, unresolved, like an anchor I can't cut away." "Have you thought about reaching out?" Thomas asked, probing deeper. "Maybe that's a layer waiting to be confronted." Confrontation, the very word sent an involuntary shiver down Jake's spine. The thought of facing the past personified in his father made his stomach churn. They hadn't spoken since the fallout over his decision to pursue a different life path, a decision marked by rejection and misunderstanding. The resulting silence echoed across the years, and Jake could feel its weight every day. "Not yet," he finally admitted, looking away. "It's easier to talk about transformation. It's tougher to live it fully, especially when it involves shame and regret." Yet, the more he considered Thomas's suggestion, the more the idea gnawed at him. It wasn't just confronting the past, it could offer redemption, a chance to rewrite his narrative, a journey not just toward healing but one that could unlock deeper wisdom. "Maybe it's time to confront it," he murmured. "But how do you even initiate something like that? What do I even say?" As they walked through the crowded hall, Jake felt an intuitive pull towards action. Rather than continuous reflection, there was a burgeoning need for execution, to take decisive steps forward. This was the crux of transformation he had spoken about. He could take a stand for himself and attempt to rebuild the bridges he had tread away from, particularly with his father, a man who had shaped much of his early identity. Was he ready to face that confrontation, equipped with the new tools he had acquired through vulnerability and growth? With resolve building inside him, Jake reached for his phone, needing a list of contacts, a way to initiate that difficult conversation. His fingers hovered over the screen, the prospect of dialing the familiar number both refreshing and terrifying. The urge to call surged in waves, each potential word echoing with the promise of clarity and the weight of uncertainty. He hesitated, heart pounding, as the decision crystallized before him. This would demand everything he had learned so far, and everything he had yet to confront. As he stood there, Jake realized he was standing at a precipice. The next step could propel him toward genuine transformation, or cast him back into the shadows of his past. Either way, it was a risk, a leap into the unknown that might redefine the contours of his emerging self. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for what lay ahead. "I've got to face it. I've got to face him," he murmured under his breath, as if the declaration could serve as a catalyst. The moment snapped into focus, a decision made, an action imminent, and a realization that the journey was far from over. But was he truly ready for the confrontation that awaited him? Would his father recognize the man he had become, or was the past too deep a wound to mend? The questions lingered like shadows, waiting to be illuminated by the light of truth, and as he awaited the dawn of resolution, Jake knew one thing for sure: a new chapter in his journey was just beginning. Heart racing, Jake's thumb hovered over his father's contact number. The world around him blurred into a nebulous haze, a stark contrast to the crystal clarity he had just felt standing on the stage. The applause still resonated in his ears, a call echoing from that moment, a reminder that transformation was within reach. Yet here he was, paralyzed by the gravity of his next step. He closed his eyes, inhaling deeply, then slowly exhaled. The air filled his lungs as he fought against the tension clutching at his chest. This wasn't just a phone call, it was a potential confrontation with the remnants of his shattered past. What did he hope to achieve? Was reconciliation even possible? The thought surged like a tide of uncertainty, crashing at the shores of his resolve. Every heartbeat echoed the distance formed by years of silence, each thump a reminder of unexpressed feelings and unresolved grief. Jake shifted his weight, his foot tapping erratically on the floor. He didn't want to look at the screen anymore, it felt like an invitation to failure. But failure would mean remaining captive to the very regrets that had haunted him long enough. He needed to face them. The conversation would need a foundation anchored in honesty, truth, and perhaps if he dared vulnerability. Perhaps his father was waiting, perhaps he too felt the burden of their silence. Could he be willing to embrace the awkwardness of their reunion and transcend the misunderstandings? His fingers darted across the screen, typing out a text instead, a safer initial step, a probe into the waters of communication. "Dad, can we talk? It's important." Feeling lighter, Jake pressed send, but the weight of uncertainty soon returned, settling heavy on his shoulders. There was no going back now, the seed had been planted, and the only way forward was through a series of conversations he needed to initiate with himself and, soon, with his father. As he stepped outside into the cool evening air, a rush of sensations flooded over him. The streetlights flickered overhead, casting soft glows that seemed to illuminate his path, even as darkness loomed around it. The calls for action on the stage had ignited something inside him, a desire to be more than merely reactive. He pulled out his journal, a constant companion through trials and triumphs, and found a bench beneath a gnarled oak tree. The branches swayed gently, whispering secrets, and he began to articulate his thoughts. Writing became a lifeline, a means of sorting through the chaos tumor that his heart felt. What he realized along the way was profound: the confrontation wasn't just with his father. It was with himself as well. He was dismantling the pieces not only of their past and grievances but also his own lingering self-doubt. How could he hold his father accountable without an admission of his own faults? This was the heart of his transformation, accepting his flaws while standing firm in his truth. He explored the weight of fear that had kept him within the confines of expectation, envisioning a new story, one where vulnerability could lead to strength. Night deepened, but inside him, a flicker of determination blazed. Jake felt himself breaking ground on a new narrative built on confrontation, healing, and reclamation of identity. What he didn't realize was that he had only begun chipping away at the layers of his psyche. With each stroke of the pen and decision made, he unearthed buried truths, discovering grit and resolve he had forgotten he possessed. Then, as he closed his journal and glanced up at the stars that twinkled brightly overhead, a new text alert illuminated his phone. It was from his father, 3 simple words that spoke volumes: when and where. Jake's heart stuttered in shock, pulsing with a blend of exhilaration and fear. This was it. The breakdown was about to begin. Would he have the courage to face all that came next? The stage for their confrontation was set, and with it came more questions and a new sense of urgency. Would this meeting heal or further complicate the intricate web of their past? Jake took a deep breath. The next step in this personal journey loomed undeniable and intense. And then he typed back, feeling a blend of fear and hope surge within him. Tomorrow, at our old diner. Tomorrow would be decisive, a turning point in a lifeline fraught with mysteries waiting to be untangled. The morning sun pierced through the heavy curtains of Jake's bedroom, casting stripes of golden light across his disheveled bed. He could hardly sleep the night before, the anticipation knotting in his stomach like a tangible weight. Every moment of darkness felt steeped in uncertainty about his impending reunion with his father. Today was not just another day, it was the day he would brave the tides of his past. Jake sat on the edge of the bed, staring at his reflection in the mirror across the room. There was a certain strangeness in seeing himself. He had spent so many years wearing the mask of indifference and strength. As he scrutinized his expression, he recognized layers of vulnerability peeking through a mixture of apprehension and determination. It was time to peel back the constructed walls and reveal the truth beneath. Resolutely, he retrieved his journal from the bedside table and flipped it open to the last entry he had made. His hands trembled slightly as he read his scattered thoughts about vulnerability being a path to strength. With a pen in hand, he added a new line: "Today, I will step into the uncertainty and reclaim my voice." The act of writing filled him with resolve, bolstering his mental armor. He wasn't just preparing for dialogue but for the potential upheaval of emotions and untold truths that might rise like a storm. He finished the note, closed the journal, and left his room ready to face the day. As he drove to the diner, it was hard to shake the feeling of being on the brink of something monumental. His hands clenched the steering wheel, but his mind felt oddly calm. Jake reflected on how many years he had spent in the shadows of his father's expectations. Today wasn't about resuming a distant relationship but owning his narrative, a reclamation of his story. Arriving at the diner, the smell of coffee and grilled breakfast foods wafted pleasantly toward him. It was a familiar environment, yet everything felt different now. He walked in, glancing around. The decor was a mix of nostalgia and monotony. The same booths where they'd shared meals when he was a child seemed to echo with laughter and regret. Jake spotted his father sitting at a table, his countenance solemn yet relieved. The years had shaped him with lines of worry and strength. With a deep breath, Jake made his way over, each step a push against the weight of his anxieties. The moment felt monumental, a collision of his past and present about to unfold. "Dad," Jake said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. His father looked up, eyes widening in surprise. "Jake. You came." "Yeah, I did. We need to talk," he replied, keenly aware of the gravity in his own words. Sitting down, Jake felt the chair beneath him was more than just furniture, it was a place where stories would navigate rough waters. Today, it would bear witness to the unearthing of their past, a setting that demanded honesty. As they exchanged pleasantries cloaked in tension, Jake felt the energy shift. He gathered his thoughts, weighing them with care. A part of him questioned whether his father understood the pain of abandonment, the silence that spoke louder than any words could. It wasn't just about confronting his father, it was about reclaiming the narrative of his growth despite that absence. "I want to talk about us, about what has been left unsaid all these years," Jake began, the air thick with anticipation. He could see the flicker of discomfort flash across his father's face, yet there was something else, a flicker of hope, perhaps. Could accountability be shared if they opened the creaky gates of their history together? With each word that passed between them, Jake felt an unexpected surge of courage. He delved into moments of hurt, of misunderstanding, and regret. In this dialogue, he uncovered buried truths not only about his father but about himself, how the constructs of his youth shaped desires for approval and love. Deep breaths became a rhythm, and with every moment of exchange there was an unearthing of strength he hadn't expected. But as the conversation unfolded, questions surfaced before they had answers. Jake's father looked at him, bewildered. "This is hard for me too." "Why now?" The question hung in the air, lingering with a weight that threatened to crush them both. Jake absorbed the moment, the push and pull of confrontation gripping him. It was time for the uncomfortable truth to surface, the consumption of guilt and inertia that potentially lay ahead. He wasn't just confronting his father, he was daring to confront everything he feared. With determination blossoming through his nervousness, Jake leaned forward, ready to lay down his truth. "Because I've waited too long to speak my heart." The words settled between them like a fragile truce. Would this admit the healing they both so desperately sought? Or would it ignite wounds that had yet to close? As Jake looked into his father's eyes, seeking a glimpse of understanding, a flicker of doubt crept in. What would be revealed in the shadow of unleashed truths? Tomorrow's confrontation loomed ready, but today carried the weight of curiosity. Would they emerge transformed or even more fragmented in the aftermath of this honest dialogue? The air hung thick between them, every second stretching into an eternity as Jake braced himself for the impending chaos of emotions. His heart pounded in rhythm with the ticking clock on the diner wall, each tick amplifying the weight of the unspoken. Would his father understand the depth of his pain? Would he finally listen? Jake, feeling the tension spilling over, decided to break the silence. "I've spent so many years waiting for you to reach out, to tell me how you felt. But you didn't, and I struggled to fill that void." His voice betrayed the stumble of his heart, sorrow mingling with an undercurrent of determination. His father's brow furrowed, confusion etched into his features. "Jake, I thought if I stayed distant, it would be easier for you. I was wrong. The admission hung heavy in the air, a confession that begged for acceptance. Easier for me? Honestly, it just felt like you left me to figure it all out alone, Jake shot back, the depth of his hurt rising to the surface. The distance of years transformed into a visceral ache, one that threatened to pull beneath the waves of conversation. Can we really change what has already happened? His father's question pierced deeper than Jake anticipated, stirring doubts that had settled under his skin. He needed to confront the very fabric of his father's reasoning, to untangle the long-held beliefs from reality. In a way, yes. It's about how we choose to move forward. But it requires both of us to carry that weight and find common ground. Jake leaned back, feeling more powerful than he ever had voicing his grievances. This wasn't just about confrontation, it was about evolution. His evolution. As the dialogue continued, every moment pushed Jake toward self-discovery. With each revelation, he began to recognize scars he thought had healed, only to find remnants lingering just below the surface. His father's imperfect parenting had left imprints, shaping Jake's view of love, connection, and self-worth. Do you even know who I am now? Jake asked, a quiver of vulnerability fusing with the strength he had cultivated through the years. You see me as that boy who needed saving, but I'm not him anymore. I've built a life without you, and yet here I am, seeking connection. His father's gaze softened, revealing a flicker of something: guilt, understanding, perhaps even acknowledgement. I see that now. I was blind to your achievements and struggles. I can't change the past, but I want to understand you better. A wave of recognition washed over Jake. Vulnerability was indeed a double-edged sword. But for every revelation, a flicker of hope ignited within him. They stood on the precipice of something transformative, yet Jake remained cautious. Could they shore up their differences into something constructive? Understanding is the first step, Jake conceded. But we cannot avoid the truth. If you feel remorse, then let us share it openly. Let us parse through every regret, apology, and misjudgment. It's the only way forward. The weight of undisclosed sentiments loomed large, but so did the allure of liberation. Each word became a chisel, carving new possibilities out of the stone that had imprisoned them both for years. Yet, the road ahead still felt ingrained in uncertainty. As they dove deeper, a question lingered at the forefront of Jake's mind, an echo of his desires that still remained hidden. Would his father be willing to confront the true depth of pain that lingered, or would they falter in their vulnerability? Revelation coursed through him, an insight that both thrilled and terrified. Seeking closure with his father was steeped in the risk of breaking the very foundation of his newly found strength. Dad, Jake's voice trembled with the weight of what was to come. Can you face not just your mistakes, but the man I've become despite them? In that moment, Jake realized he was not just confronting an absence, he was also fortifying his own identity, aware that this dialogue might either offer healing or shatter the remnants of trust entirely. As uncertainty hovered, Jake prepared for the potential upheaval, ready to navigate through whatever truths might unveil themselves. Outside, the sky darkened in anticipation, a stark contrast to the warmth inside the diner. What fate awaited them with this newfound open dialogue? Jake took a deep breath, knowing they were about to delve into uncharted waters. Would his father rise to meet him in this profound moment, or would fear drive them apart once more? Jake's heart raced as the silence wrapped around them again, but he pushed on, determined to dig deeper. What will it take for you to truly see me? I've changed, grown. This journey, he gestured broadly, it hasn't been easy, but it's mine. It's my life, and I want you to understand that. His father's gaze dropped, his fingers tracing the coffee-stained table. It feels like I missed everything that mattered. I saw your mother struggle without me, and I thought it would be better to keep my distance. I didn't want to be the man who let you down. The tremor in his father's voice mimicked the uncertainty lingering in Jake's chest. By being absent, you became the source of my struggle, Jake said, a steady resolve creeping into his voice. I learned to create my own path, but it came with a cost. I've turned away from people, kept walls up as a defense. All because I thought I was safer alone. The irony struck him in seeking safety, he had ironically compounded his loneliness. A shadow of regret crossed his father's face. I never wanted you to feel that way. I didn't realize the impact my choices had on you. I thought you'd be better off without me figuring into the equation. That's the irony of it, Jake countered, frustration spilling over. You thought being distant was a form of protection. What I needed was your presence, your ability to show up. The void you left has been filled with uncertainty and unanswered questions. With each word, Jake felt the walls of his own heart soften, revealing vulnerabilities he had long shielded. There was a shift in the atmosphere. Jake could feel it. His father's posture relaxed just slightly, a flicker of awareness dawning in his expression. Perhaps he was beginning to grasp the reality not just of his absence but of Jake's profound desire for connection, for understanding. Tell me what you need from me, Jake. I want to be part of your life, if you'll allow it. His father's voice broke, earnestness present in his eyes. Jake took a deep breath, the impact of those words pulsing in his veins. He contemplated the fragility of forgiveness. It starts with honesty. I need you to recognize the pain you've caused. I want you to meet me where I am now, not where you think I should be. His father nodded, internalizing the gravity of their conversation. I understand. It's more than changes. It's about acknowledging the hurt and the void I left behind. Silence enveloped them again, but this time it was different. They had peeled back layers, exposing deeper truths. Jake felt a sense of empowerment washing over him. The act of laying bare his feelings, his needs, strengthened him in a way he hadn't anticipated. Naming his scars transformed them from burdens to badges of resilience. What happens next? Jake ventured, the weight of expectation hanging delicately in the air. Can we really rebuild from here? His father shifted uncomfortably, the vulnerability of their exchange perhaps stifling. It won't be easy. Trust is earned, but I want to try. I don't want to lose you again. Jake felt a surge of hope tempered with fear. The road ahead was fraught with challenges. Could they truly navigate the complexities of their past? Would his father follow through when it counted most? Let's start with small steps, Jake suggested, his voice steadier than before. Baby steps toward understanding, towards growth. I'll show you the man I've become, but you need to meet me halfway. As the evening wore on, the realization settled in that this conversation, while transformative, was only the beginning of a much larger journey. They had taken the first step, but there were many twists to come. How would they navigate the turbulent waters that still lay ahead? Just as Jake's uncertainty began to settle, a siren wailed outside, blaring like a warning. Moments later, he glanced at his father and saw the tension return to his features. What now? He thought, anxiety clenching at his insides. Was something else about to disrupt this fragile breakthrough? Jake, his father said, urgency creeping into his voice. We have more to discuss, but I can't ignore the past while I'm still afraid of what it will reveal. Can you help me face it? In that question, Jake felt the depth of the journey ahead, their history blurred with both hope and dread, the path to reconciliation twisted with the realities of time, legacy, and loss. Jake breathed out slowly, feeling the floodgates of emotions opening wide as he regarded the man across from him, his father. The air was thick with unfinished business and years lost to silence. Today marked not just a meeting but the dawn of an era of confrontation, clarity, and eventual healing. I can help you face it, Jake replied, the weight of conviction grounding him. But first, we have to be honest about everything: the hurt, the experience, the long-lost connection. His father nodded slowly, the sincerity of Jake's words hanging between them. We both have things to address. I can't ask you to forgive me until I've faced my share of the blame. In that moment, something shifted within Jake. This wasn't merely a conversation, it was a bridge being built from debris, the fallout of their past turning into a foundation for something new. As they delved deeply into their shared history, Jake recounted his struggles, highlighting how the absence of his father had shaped him into a man who wore his determination as armor. He spoke candidly of feeling invisible during critical moments, the void echoing louder than their shared silence. Each word unveiled layers of pent-up grief, but, more importantly, it reinforced his resolve for the future. His father listened, nodding earnestly. The walls once constructed to protect his version of reality began to crumble, revealing a man burdened by his own failures. "I thought it best to shield you from disappointment," he confessed, his voice trembling. "I was lost in my own fears, believing being invisible was a sacrifice made for your sake." "Dad, I needed you to see me," Jake countered gently. "I didn't need perfection or a hero, I needed my father to be present. Instead, I became a stranger to myself, creating a path alone because I didn't know how else to cope." Silence enveloped them, both grappling with the raw honesty that had emerged. This catharsis allowed room for shame to be echoed rather than harbored. The weight of regrets hung heavily in the air, yes, but so did the prospect of hope. "Maybe living in silence left us both hiding from our truths," Jake added, his heart racing with renewed vigor. "I'm not asking for perfection moving forward, I'm asking for connection. I need to know that we can do this together without fear of being unheard." As they navigated deeper into their conversation, Jake felt himself evolving not just as a son seeking reconciliation but as a man reclaiming his narrative. His father's eyes softened as he began to truly grasp the gravity of his absence, a realization dawning, a recognition of the legacy not of wealth but of emotional endeavors, the kind that shaped who Jake had become. Jake, seeing the shift, ventured forth. "It's not just about healing our rift but also about creating new memories, ones filled with understanding, compassion, and visibility." Determined to leave remnants of bitterness in their past, Jake added, "Together, we will rewrite our story, and it starts with the commitment we make today." His father exhaled, vulnerability shimmering in his presence. "You're right. I'm ready to step in, to explore the uncharted territories of our relationship." A wave of relief surged within Jake. They weren't merely repairing a broken bond, they were crafting an entirely new dynamic, one based largely on openness, fortitude, and enduring support. Jake stood taller, an unshakable sense of confidence taking root. They had transformed their narrative from silence to one punctuated with truth. "Let us make it a habit to meet to establish not just a connection but a genuine relationship. Let us also take them one day at a time." His father's nod conveyed everything. Mutual respect, accountability, and a burgeoning bond emerged as their new mantra, shift from absence to presence. As they exited the diner, a gust of fresh air washed over them. Jake felt lighter. He defaced his fears and helped spark a catalyst for change not just within himself but also in his father. There was an undeniable sense of accomplishment. Together, they had embarked on an adventure toward healing. They both stepped into the sunlight, revitalized with purpose and strength, equipped to navigate the chaotic waters that lay ahead. Jake realized he had finally achieved what he so desperately sought, to not only confront the shadows of his past but to illuminate both their paths toward a brighter future. Jake was not just a son anymore, he was a man, wholly transformed and ready to embrace the journey ahead with solid confidence, nurtured by the wisdom of vulnerability. Their walk marked the beginning of redefined relations, underscored by open dialogues rather than silent barriers, a triumph over time that muted their voices and stifled their connection. This was more than a beginning, it was a celebration of growth, love, and unyielding resilience. You need to subscribe now to follow Jake's remarkable journey and find more transformative stories. Leave a like now to support the algorithm and show you care about heartfelt transformations. Comment below with your reactions and your own personal journeys of overcoming challenges. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this incredible conclusion, because true fans of personal stories understand our shared experiences forge our pathways forward. Don't wait even one more second to share.